Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Swift Half with Snowdon. To say I am excited about speaking to my next guest would be a colossal understatement. We've only got half an hour. I want to get straight into it. He is quite simply the greatest snooker player of all time. He is Ronnie O'Sullivan. Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us.
Chris, how you doing? You all right?
I'm not bad. How's lockdown been treating you? How's it, this crazy last 14 months been for you?
It's actually been all right, really. You know, we've been able to play snooker and it's all been kept in one sort of venue. So it's kind of eliminated a lot of the stuff that I didn't like about snooker, which was obviously trying to get from one event to another. So it kind of like, it just enforces, it's just like playing down your local snooker club every day, really. So it was kind of good for me. I was able to, you know, just be in much better preparation and play as much as all the other players for a change, you know, which was nice.
Because a lot of people thought that you probably struggle more than most with having no fans there, because the fans are nearly always on your side. But you did pretty well. I mean, won the World Championship.
Yeah. I had a really good, so from the start of lockdown, I think I played in like 12, 13 tournaments and I managed to get to 6 finals. I lost 5 of them, but I won the World Championship. So, you know, it worked out pretty well, you know, and I had a pretty decent season. And yeah, on the whole, I really, really enjoyed it. And, you know, a lot of the other benefits of it as well was I was forced to get back into my running because I stopped doing that for about 10 years. And, you know, just finding things to fill your time up, really.
I didn't realize you'd stopped running for so long. I thought that was something you'd been doing constantly for a long time, because you always look very trim.
Yeah, no, I was pretty lean and I was in good shape in about 2008, 2009. That's probably the fittest and fastest I was ever running, because I used to run for a running club. So it wasn't like I'd go out for a jog. I kind of really got into it. So I'd do like track sessions, run for my club. Yeah, I run in the Southern English cross country championships for my club. So I really got quite serious into it. And then I got injuries and there was snooker there, and it was a choice between having some operations done on my foot, and I just couldn't really justify it because I thought it meant like 2 months in the boot, and then it meant another 6 weeks of rehabbing, and I just thought I'm not getting paid to run, so you know I had to find other ways of keeping fit. So I went to the gym. I still ran a little bit, but nothing like I used to. But I'm now 45, and I just think, how do I want my next 20 years to look? So running is a great community of people, and you know I get so much joy and pleasure out of being involved in that community that it's allowed me to get fit enough again to feel like I can go and race and go and train with other people that take their running seriously.
And under lockdown, you weren't even allowed to exercise with more than one person, were you? So is this something obviously you can do alone, but you prefer to do it with other people?
Yeah, I much prefer. Listen, there's the social side of it, and then it's a bit like snooker. And like I've got a running coach, and I'm always saying to him, should I be doing this with other people? And he said, look, running's a bit like snooker. You just got to get the work done, whether you've got someone to play with or not. You know, it's just about banking that practice time, putting the time in, and you know, and it's not a team sport. So most of the time you have to sort of motivate yourself to get the work done. So, you know, in lockdown, yeah, we could run with one other person, which was great, but most of the time it was just done on your own, which is great, really. That's one of the reasons why I like running, is that I don't need a gym, or I don't need someone else to, you know, if you want to go and play football, you've got to find like maybe 7 or 8 people at the same time as you that can find the time. So running fits perfectly into my lifestyle, really.
So tell me about the setup in Milton Keynes. Well, like you say, nearly all the tournaments were being played there from when was it, like May last year, when it was still full lockdown. There was no football going on. I was watching Nicaraguan football at 2 o'clock in the morning because it's about the only place doing anything. But then snooker comes back. It's about the only sport at all. No fans, of course. And as I understand it, everyone, including like the camera crew and the caterers, are all stuck in this compound in Milton Keynes, and you're not allowed to leave. You've got to take a test to go in, and then you can't leave until you lose a match, basically. Is that how it was?
Yeah, the early ones were, the first one was tough, I must admit, but I was so keen to play and so keen to just do something that I went through with it, and basically I had to sit in my room for like 22 hours. But by this time I'd already started running for 2 months, so I was kind of like, it was big on me to be outside, get fresh air, and I was really, really happy just doing that. You know, I didn't really need to play snooker. So after one of them days, I said to the girl, I said, look, I can't be being cooped up inside for 2-3 days, or do you know what I mean? I said, I love my snooker and that. I said, but the food's not great. You know, I said, it's just so much of a mission, you know, like I'm not going to be able to eat your food, so I have to bring all my own food. I just went, it's just not worth it. So they were totally understanding of it all as well, because it was hard for everybody. But I've just kind of had this thing in my head that unless I'm really happy with something or doing something, I'd rather not do it. So the second one come around, I thought, well, I'll give it another go. And I've done it again. And I said, look, I can't do this. So from that point onwards, I said, unless I can go to a venue, play, have my test, wait 3-4 hours till you get the result, unless I'm allowed to go out and do my run, go to Marks, get my food and just have a bit of fresh air, basically, I wasn't prepared to play in that sort of strict conditions. But as time went on, I think people realised that you couldn't keep people cooped up. You could only do so much. You had to give some people some sort of freedom and flexibility to be able to get on with what they wanted to, just to keep people happy. It's just not realistic to keep people stuck in a hotel where there's no windows, no outdoor space for any longer than, I'd say like 4, 5, 6 hours, So, as time went on, it kind of got a bit more sensible and common sense prevailed. And, you'd have your tests and then you was able to kind of go outside. And as long as you was careful, all they asked was to be careful. And as snooker players, we're quite solitary people anyway. So I was never really putting myself at risk, if that makes sense, or other people.
Well, you've seemed to me, and a lot of people, a lot happier last 4 or 5 years with the snooker since you've sort of pared down the amount you're playing. Is a lot of that just due to you not being in hotel rooms as much, because you're not doing that much international travel? You play all the UK-based tournaments, of which there are plenty these days. I think you go to China once a year, do you? But apart from that, you're not like going to the Riga Masters or the German Masters. Is that good for your well-being, just not having to go on these planes and stuck in hotel rooms? Is that the main thing that's cheered you up?
I'd love to play a little bit more. I really would, because I love playing snooker. But until the people that organise the game kind of schedule it properly, because, for me, like we have like 5 tournaments in China, and they'll kind of make you fly around the world 6 times in the space of, or 5 or 6 times in the space of 6-7 weeks. So you won't just, like on most circuits, you'll kind of do, in tennis, you'll do the American circuit, then you do European circuit, then you do the Asian circuit. So you're not kind of go backwards and forth. And I just kind of thought, until the people that are organising the schedule kind of do it sensibly, it's impossible for me to have a life and playing all the tournaments. For me, my life comes first, enjoying myself and just feeling good in yourself. So I'd like to play more, but until the players' schedule and their time is kind of considered important, then I'm not prepared to do that. So like you say, I pick and choose the UK tournaments. I just keep my eye in as much as I can. I like the exhibition circuit to have a bit of fun, and I just like to play. I don't care where I play or who I play. I just like to play. In fact, I have more fun playing people that ain't really that good than I do playing people that are really good, because a lot of time when you play good players, you kind of have to be a bit defensive, you have to be a bit cagey, you have to be a bit patient. And sometimes I just want to like let loose and just, have fun with the game. But, so it doesn't matter where and who I play as long as I play, if that makes sense.
So would you genuinely be happy if it was like a proper sort of Formula One or tennis tour where you're spending months from home, but you're in Europe for a couple of months, you're in Asia for a couple of months and what have you?
Well, if you you do that anyway as a sportsman. That's part and parcel of the job. And I would imagine Formula One would get a lot. Formula One would start their session, say, get there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they'd have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. Whereas in snooker, if you look at the calendar, one tournament just literally rolls into the next. So you can be away from home so much anyway. It's just kind of, it's just difficult. You have to weigh up is it something you're prepared? If I was single, had no kids, had no people, I'd probably go to most of the tournaments, but, I have a partner, we have some kids, and I have all that sort of stuff. And I'm just not prepared to sort of, for what I get out of snooker, I'm not prepared to sort of give all that up just for snooker. Do you see what I'm saying? If it was Formula One, tennis or golf, you go, it's a nice lifestyle, you get rewarded very well, and you kind of go, well, I have 5 years, 10 years this, and then I can retire. Whereas snooker, it's not that type of sport. So I'm not prepared to give my whole life to it when really, no, I'm not.
Yeah, well, you've done a fair stint already. It's nearly 30 years as a professional now, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you started, I guess snooker was still sort of in that post-80s heyday.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it went downhill a bit, and there were very few tournaments for a while. And then Barry Hearn took over. Barry Hearn, of course, had just retired as World Snooker. I mean, how different from your perspective is the game? I mean, aside from what you've already said about the, too much travel, compared to like 20 years ago after the tobacco advertising ban got rid of so many tournaments, what difference do you see? I mean, because I see as a viewer, I see snooker on constantly, basically on Eurosport, pretty much every week, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the best times were probably like 1992, 1993, when I first come on the tour. We'd have probably like 14, 12, 13, 14 tournaments. It might have been maybe 10 ranking events, 3 or 4 invitation events. And they was all proper events. So like the venues were like all in theatres. There was just 2 tables at the venue. There was just 32 players at the venue. So it became like a bit more of a relaxed environment, and the playing venues were great. So for me, that was when snooker was at its best. That's when I enjoyed it most, because one tournament never rolled into the next. You'd always have at least a week off in between. So you could win one tournament, go home, have a couple of days off, have a couple of days practice, get ready for the next tournament. So every tournament became like, you were prepared, you prepared properly, and you felt like you could win it. Whereas now you could do well in 2 or 3 events, but then eventually that would catch up on you, and you'd be so tired and so lethargic that you need a rest, sort of thing. And a lot of the venues that we play at now, they're like in leisure centres. And I don't like playing in leisure centres, to be honest with you. They don't.
Thinking of Crawley.
Yeah, I mean,
I was there last time. Yeah.
Have you been to Crawley?
Yeah. I saw Alan against Selby, and the match went on so long we had to leave before the end. It was just.
Okay, so you've been to the Crucible as well, obviously.
Yeah, and go to the Masters every year.
And so you get the difference between the Crucible and the Crawley venue.
Yeah, sure. It's not the greatest venue in the world, but
right. And Crawley's not the worst venue, to be fair. That's just like the standard model nowadays for most tournaments. It just happened to be that Crawley got. It was like I was in that time and place where I just thought, I've had enough. Do you know what I mean? Crawley was the venue it was at, and I just kind of had to say what had to be said, really. But like the difference between playing, so like the Crucible, every event and every venue was like the Crucible in the early 1992. So we'd go to Goffs in Ireland, which was even better than the Crucible. We went to the Civic Centre in Motherwell, and that was a fantastic venue. And all the venues were pretty much like that. So for me, as a player, I get excited by playing in good venues. That brings the best out of me. I that's what I thrive on. So when I go to a venue and the venue's not great, and you don't feel like you get the buzz, to want to really play your best snooker. So for me, that was always a big thing. But I understand the snooker in there is open to 128 players, and it's just there's not enough money in the sport to have 128 players and have really good venues. There just isn't enough money to support that. So I accept that now, and that's why I don't really class myself as a snooker player anymore. I look at myself like an amateur. So as I just get my cue out and play for fun, and I do all my other bits and pieces for work, and then I just fit a bit of snookering when I can. And as long as I have it like that, I can enjoy it. I wouldn't want to play snooker for a living these days, because it's just too tiring, too much snooker, and in the end, it's just not a great life. So I decided to get my life good, and then. Like I say, play snooker for fun, bit of amateur, and that's how I see myself, really.
You're doing pretty well for an amateur. It was kind of funny watching the Milton Keynes ones, because they were literally going back to back. They're playing the final on the Sunday, and sometimes you could hear the people in the background banging away, getting ready to set it up for tomorrow. So they put a different carpet down, a different gambling sponsor on the side, and suddenly it's not the Northern Ireland Masters, it's a German Masters or whatever. What would be the effect? Because there were, I don't know, 5 or 6 tournaments a year at snooker's low point. About 50 years ago or so it felt to me. And now there's endless tournaments. And they're nearly all sponsored by betting firms, aren't they?
Yeah.
Gambling firms, Coral, Betfred, whatever. I don't know if you're aware, the government's now talking about possibly
Yeah.
banning gambling sponsorship, which wouldn't just
Yeah.
affect snooker, it'd be darts, rugby, all sorts. What would be the effects of that, do you think, on the game?
I don't really know. I mean, a lot of people were worried when tobacco went, and it was that really affected snooker. But I think now Barry's in there, I'm sure he's aware of that, and he's not going to sort of wait until the last minute to try and get a new set of sponsors on board. So I'd imagine, he's already looking into replacing the gambling sponsors, because obviously once the government sort of give you the impression that's like the gambling sponsor is not going to be around, you just know that it's inevitable that it's going to happen. So I'm sure that Barry's already got people in place or thought of people to replace the betting sponsor. So I wouldn't be so worried about that at all, really. I think snooker will be fine.
I hope you're right there. I was at your shop, as you know, when I was in Sheffield. I got my Ronnie O'Sullivan hat. I've got my Ronnie O'Sullivan mug. All the merch. I've got my Ronnie O'Sullivan picture. This isn't from your shop. It's from the Times magazine. I've often got that behind me when I'm appearing on TV. But it seems like you've always got some sort of side project on. In addition to the snooker, I was watching your American Hustle again recently, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is, for people who don't know, this is when it was on the History Channel, actually. Ronnie goes out to America and starts hustling people in pool holes on the basis that they won't know who he is. Turned out, actually, Ron, that people who hang around in pool holes, even in America, do tend to know who you are quite often, don't they?
Yeah, YouTube messed all that up.
Yeah. But you had that, you got your novels, you've got your cookbooks, you got your shop. Is this just sort of a way to get some additional money, or is it mainly just to keep you occupied? Because you seem quite a restless guy.
Yeah, I think about 5 or 6. I mean, obviously, once Barry came in, there was a lot of tournaments, and at first it was good because most of them was in the UK, and it was fine. But then obviously there was the backwards and forwards from China, and all the big tournaments were in China, and unless you play in them tournaments, the chances are, unless you win the majority of the tournaments you play in the UK, I'd probably drop down to like 50, 60 odd in the world. And I just thought, I can't go backwards and forward and do this. So I kind of like, about 6 years ago, decided that I'm better off making a living away from snooker. The purism side of me, it was really hard, because ever since I started playing snooker, I would never let anything get in the way of me playing. Do you see what I'm saying? It was like snooker came first. I wanted to be the best I could be, win every tournament I could play in. And it's hard to change from that. But I was kind of like, I suppose I was forced to have to find another way, because there was no way that I could become a purist snooker player and be happy, because it meant traveling to like constantly and just on this never-ending treadmill. So a part of me thought, I need to now find something to do away from snooker, and just trust that the snooker gods will look after me, and I'll always be able to play some tournaments. So the purism side has gone out of me, and the more and more I'm doing that, the less and less purist I've become. At first it was really hard, because it went against every value inside of me. It was like, how do I not practice for 3 or 4 hours every day? How do I not play in every tournament? How do I not try and do what all the other pros are doing? It's a bit like Lance Armstrong when he was training for the Tour de France. I said, well, what? He said, well, on Christmas Day, I'll be out riding 5-6 hours a day, because I knew that if my opponents wasn't doing that, I had a bit of a psychological edge on them. And that's how I approach my snooker. Now I'm the complete opposite. I won't get on my bike or get my cue out for ages, because that purism side of me has kind of been squashed, if you like, and I've had to crush it, because I wasn't happy playing snooker in the environment, the way it was structured. I couldn't give my life to it and be happy. So I thought, hold on, I still want to play, but I just had to find a different model and a different approach and a different way to find enjoyment from playing. So the exhibitions were a fantastic thing, which I'd never really done, but I love being on the road. I love playing, and I love entertaining. So I kind of got my buzz that way. And then obviously, other opportunities arose. Whereas before I'd say, no, I'm not doing it. Now I was like, yeah, I'll try that. I'll try this and I'll try that. And, it's probably been, it's been a really good thing for me to do. Like you said, it's been a bit of a distraction, really.
Well, you've been very modest and saying, you're sort of an amateur now. And obviously you won the World Championship last year. I've seen you play stuff in the last 3 years that it's about as close to perfection as I've ever seen snooker played. You know, you outdone yourself in my opinion, and you've had to, I guess, raising the game. I know you lost it against Judd in the Masters, but you know, the snooker being played there between the two of you was as good as I think a human being could play snooker. It more or less came to the break off. You know, somebody left a red out, it was going to go in, and there'd be a century and onto the next frame. It was just incredible standard. So, you know, what's, if you're not practicing that much, it's just just experience now, is it?
When I say I don't practice much, obviously, like this year with the lockdown, I practiced more and played more than I ever done, because a lot of things were obviously cancelled, put on the back burner, and it forced me into, you know, just becoming like a full-time pro again, you know. So that was good in a way. So I'd practice for 2-3 hours a day, and really, when you're playing a lot of competitions, you don't need to do a lot of practice. The only reason why I was practicing was because I enjoyed being at the club. No one was down there. It was only open for me. I'd invite another professional down to play with. And it was just nice just to get out of the house. So this year I probably put more into my snooker than I have done in the last probably 10 years. So, you know, I enjoyed that kind of like experience. But you're right, you know, the game has really improved and gone on. And I just think you just have to reinvent yourself. And like the players like Judd and Neil Robertson, you know, they're a different type of player to what I was playing with in the 90s. You know, Hendry was a great attacking player. But he was the only one. Now you've got maybe 10 or 11 players that play like that to that level, you know. So, you know, the game sort of forces you to reinvent yourself, and new players come along, make you look at yourself and go, okay, well I need to. And that's the one thing I've really been proud of myself about, is that I've been able to sort of learn from other players, incorporate some of the good bits from their game and put it into my game. And I've actually felt my own game develop in a way, you know. I haven't stood still, you know. I've kind of tried to move on with the times to try and compete with these younger guys, you know.
Yeah, too right. One of the other side projects you do, of course, is commentating on Eurosport. I watch all the snooker now on Eurosport. Even if it's on the BBC, I still watch it on Eurosport, because I think they've got a better team. They also just seem like they're more grateful for having the rights as well. The BBC tends to stick everything on the red button, maybe starts getting interested around the semi-final stages.
Yeah.
So I stay loyal to Eurosport because they show all the snooker.
Yeah.
But do you think, obviously every time somebody like me switches to Eurosport, the ratings for the BBC goes down? Do you think there'll be a time when the BBC just decides, well, there's no point us showing it because Eurosport have got it all, and they just gradually just phase out their coverage? And what would be the effect of sort of attracting new fans if that happens?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be sad, you know, if BBC wasn't involved in snooker, but like everything's changing so much now, and who's to say that, you know, snooker isn't bought by an Amazon or a Netflix or some sort of company like that? You know, nowadays they're the ones with the big budgets, they're the ones with the big money to be able to put a great production together, you know. So although we kind of grew up in the days where BBC was, you know, like we only had 4 channels, and then Sky come along, and then all these different channels come along, and now it's changing again, you know, like Amazon and Netflix. So, you know, maybe that's what snooker needs, is an Amazon or a Netflix to come in and go, you know, we're really going to push this, and like, you know, like you say, most people watch a lot of their stuff on the phones now, you know. So, you know, is BBC really the best place for sport to be shown now? I know a lot of people still watch TVs in their house, but, you know, when you look at the younger generation, like my kids, they're always on their phones, you know, these 14, 15-year-olds, a new generation. I'm not sure they actually know what a TV is, you know. They're kind of glued to their phones and stuff like that. So, you know, maybe it is time for snooker to sort of move on to another platform. Who knows, you know?
Yeah, perhaps. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, if you'd have asked me 20 years ago who I think would be world champion, I probably would have said somebody from China.
Yeah.
It seemed then, you know, such a massive country. They're so mad on their snooker. They've got all these, you know, finishing schools, you know, big clubs where people are practicing from a very young age. Whereas in this country, you know, it seems to me, as somebody who goes to a snooker club quite a bit, very hard to get kids interested. A lot of them haven't got the patience for it. And I just thought the sheer weight of numbers would mean that the top 16 would be dominated by Chinese players, and Chinese players would be winning everything. But it hasn't really happened. Obviously, there's some good Chinese players, but they don't often win very much. And there's not as many of them as you might have predicted. Why do you think that is?
Do you know what? It's really funny, because if I was to take you to a snooker academy in Sheffield, which are dominated by the Thais and the Chinese players, you'd see maybe 30 or 40 Chinese or Asian kids playing snooker. And if you was to just stand there and watch them all day, you'd be like, every one of these is good enough to be a world champion. So on the practice table, they look absolutely fantastic, and they pop balls off the lampshade, and you just think they're just unbelievably talented players. And, you know, and they have a very, very strong work ethic where they'll put 6, 7, 8 hours a day in. Whereas a lot of the English players, you know, not the old ones like me, John Higgins, Mark Williams, Judd Trump, we kind of come along in an era when amateur snooker was still big in the UK. So we had a much, it was like growing, it's like being a runner in Kenya. You're surrounded by lots of other people that really take their sport seriously. So it kind of rubs off on you on the way. But, you know, once we turned professional, a lot of the amateur circuit dissipated, and a lot of the young players in the UK now have lost that work ethic, whereas the Chinese have a very, very strong work ethic. But what they don't seem to be able to do is translate that practice form onto the match table. Now, I don't think it's obviously not for ability. I just think it's where they're quite sort of, they don't come out with a fight. You know, sometimes you've got to come out, and when you go from the practice table to the match table, it's about finding that fighting spirit in you, and sometimes imposing your character on the game and showing who's boss. And I think a lot of the Chinese players are such lovely, placid sort of people. They're not able to come out fighting enough to kind of put a little bit of, to basically stamp their authority on the game, which is what you need to do when you're playing a top player. You need to make them feel uncomfortable. And I don't think they know how to do that as yet, or whether it's in their makeup to be able to do that. So, you know, although snooker's not a physical game, it's still about you leaving your presence on that table. You know, making your opponent think about what you're doing is quite an important part of snooker, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Are you sort of aware of any young English players, by which I mean sort of kids more or less, who you really think could be the next big thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking out for young talent, and apparently there was one in Sheffield that Jimmy White was telling me. He said, Ron, he's going to be the real deal, and I totally respect Jimmy's opinion of a snooker player, because, you know, he does know his snooker, and I wasn't so sure, but then a couple of people told me, they went, no, this kid is the real deal. I actually don't even know his name, but I'd love to see him play, and I'm sure I'll get to see him play at some point in Sheffield. But yeah, I mean, mate, yeah, it's difficult. Like you say, there's a lot of other sports now. If you're a parent, you know, you want to get your son into sport. You know, you choose football, tennis, golf. You know, is snooker on that list? You know, years ago there used to be snooker clubs everywhere. You know, on every high street. Now there isn't. You know, so it's not like you know. If I had my son and I was thinking, I've got to take him snooker, I think I've got to take him like 35, 40 minutes drive to the nearest snooker club. Whereas football, tennis, golf, you've got lots of places on your doorstep to take them. So, you know, it's hard. I think the grassroots of snooker need looking at if the future of snooker is going to be like it was, say, like 20, 30 years ago, you know?
Yeah, it's a big problem. Like I say, I'm a member of a small club, 4 tables. We've got average age probably about 62 or something, you know. And
Yeah.
I met Barry Hearn actually 2 or 3 years ago, and like you, he was very generous with his time, and I was hoping he might give me some tips on how to kind of rejuvenate the place. And he basically said, you know, close it down, turn it into flats, you know, which wasn't exactly what I was after.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. Snooker has sort of changed. You know, like in the 80s, it was like unbelievable sport. You know, and you know, snooker clubs were like, it's unbelievable. But like, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why it changed. I think when they banned smoking, that was a big killer. I remember a lot of the culture of a snooker club was, you go up there, you'd have a game of cards, you'd have a cup of tea, you'd have a beer, you'd play the fruit machines, you'd have a fag. All the sort of things that are not meant to be good for you were done in snooker halls. And then you had your snooker tables in the background, and you know, that was the culture of snooker clubs. But since they stopped banning on smoking, I remember a lot of people went, well, if I can't smoke, I'm going to go and play in some local gambling club where I can smoke. And it all kind of went a bit underground in many ways. So once you lost that, you lost a lot of, like, the people that were running the clubs. They made their money from people like this. That's how their businesses survived. They didn't survive on charging someone £5 an hour to play snooker. Yeah. You know, so a lot of the businesses shut down, and it's a shame, really. So I think to get snooker back, you know, I just don't think it can, because I think like I said before, young kids now are very different. You know, they're not interested in playing snooker. It's too slow. It's too laborious. It's like Test cricket. You know, like, you know, they just want instant. You know, their attention span is so short now that you know, it doesn't make sense to go down and play snooker for 4 or 5 hours a day. It's like, really? Why would I want to do that? You know, so it's like the culture of people have changed, I think.
It's because people like you make it look so easy on the TV, and then people actually get to the club and see how big the table is and realize they can't pot anything for weeks and weeks. It's very, you know, dispiriting. I think it is a hard game, isn't it? Obviously, and yeah.
Oh, mate, honestly, I mean, there's some days where I go in and I just think this game is like so easy that you do take it for granted, you know, sometimes, you know, not all the time, but quite, you know, a few times where you think, wow. And then there's days where you go in and it's such a hard game. You just think, I can't, you know, I can't even feel, I don't even feel like I can put 4 or 5 balls together. And I think, well, if I feel like that, how does the normal guy that maybe plays once a week or once every 2 weeks feel, you know? Maybe they get just as much enjoyment out of it because they're not playing it. They're just playing it for fun, you know, but it is a very, very tough game. I'd imagine golf is a little bit like that. You know, any still ball sport and you're having to make the balls do the work, you know. If it goes wrong, you kind of think, well, it's gone wrong because I've done something wrong. Whereas in tennis, football, a bit more of a reaction sort of sport. It's a lot different. But snooker's a very, very tough game to play.
Yeah, the key to it for me is just play people who are equally useless. And, you know, I just go down on a Friday night, have a few beers and, you know, happy just to pot a red and a black, you know, it's equally exciting so long as everyone's the same terrible standard. You don't beat yourself up about it.
No, exactly. No, listen, I always play. It's just about enjoying it. I think snooker's one of them games you need to enjoy it, whether you're an amateur or someone that plays every now and again or a pro. I think the key to snooker is that if you can, and it's about your temperament really. If you can go out there and have fun with it, it's a great game. But it's one of them games. If you take it too seriously, you let it weigh you down. It can be a nightmare. So I think it's just it's a sort of it's a sport you should just try and, you know, have fun with, I suppose.
All right, we're coming up to the half-hour mark. So the final question, Ronnie, is I saw you on one of the Eurosport documentaries, The Joy of Six, when you're talking about your World Championship wins. And you said in that, which was recorded before this year's tournament, that if you didn't win it this year, you never would again. You don't still believe that, do you?
Yeah, I must admit, at the time, I just thought I didn't expect to win it last year. Probably, you know, because I hadn't really done well there for the last 6 or 7 years. And a lot of the reason why I didn't do well is because I never like played the full circuit. I never like gave it 100%. And I just don't think, unless you do that, it's very hard to then say, oh, I'm going to switch it on for this one tournament because, you know, it just really is. So having won it last year was a bit of a, you know, I was surprised. I never expected it. And I thought, unless I go there this year and keep that momentum going, probably it might never happen. But I had a really, even though I lost this year, I spent some time with Steve Peters there. And as the tournament went on, I just felt I was getting in a much, much better place mentally, you know, because Sheffield's hard, you know, it's 17 days if you go all the way. But it's the bits in between where you kind of feel like just stand in a good place. And I managed to do that really well with Steve Peters this year. And that's why I felt really disappointed that I didn't win my match against Anthony McGill, because I felt like I was just starting to come into play some good form. And I thought, you know, if I'd have got to the quarters and I was just starting to play some good stuff, that the timing would have been perfect. So it kind of like made me think, well, maybe I have got another one in me. I am 45, but then, you know, Selby's 37. He's just won the world title and they're on about it. He could probably win another 3 or 4. So, you know, I don't see no reason why there isn't another one in there. I think I just have to be a little bit more sensible in my schedule and make sure that, you know, not that I have to play every tournament, but sometimes go to a tournament and just make sure my game's there. I'm match sharp. Probably better off not winning this one, getting home, having a few days, and just try and find that balance between knowing my game's in the right place, but not being living out of a suitcase and getting home, and just finding that balance. And then hopefully, if I get that right, then come Sheffield, I could be, you know, it's all about timing. Hopefully I can hit some form, have everything in the right place, and hopefully get another world title, because it'd be great to win it at the Crucible again, you know?
Yeah, too right. And for what it's worth, I think you probably would have beaten Selby in that final. I mean, Selby played great. The long potting from both players was brilliant. But if you'd have been potting long pots like Sean Murphy did, you would have won, because Murphy just let himself down with the break building, you know. But
yeah,
I look forward to seeing a Selby O'Sullivan final. I don't know if you look forward to it so much, but I mean, the semi-final last year was just amazing.
Yeah.
Great television, very exciting.
No, totally look forward to it. I'd love that to happen. And there was a time when I never looked forward to playing Selby, but now I actually really enjoy playing him, because I found a way that if I play a certain way against him, it's on my terms. I don't really bother about getting bogged down, and it's quite a nice way. I actually look forward to playing him now.
That's good. All right, Ronnie, thanks so much for joining us. Very kind of you to be so generous with your time. Hope you have a good off season and find lots of things to do. Enjoy your running. Take care. Thank you very much.
We'll have to have a game of snooker soon, yeah?
Come on down. Thank you very much for joining us at home. If you wish to support the IEA and this kind of digital material, you can now support us on Patreon, where we've set up a membership platform that allows our followers to donate solely towards our digital work, while subscribing as an online patron to exclusive IEA perks, benefits, priority access to our content, and much, much more. So if you'd like the opportunity to directly help the IEA continue producing stimulating and educational online content, head over to patreon.com/IEA London, or follow the link in the chat and video description. Thank you to all the IEA online patrons supporting our digital work, especially those VIP level patrons such as Timothy Worrell and Mark Edwards. I'll be back in a week or two with another guest. Hope you can tune in then. Until then, take care and goodbye.